bit later.
Fantastic. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel, as he introduced me. I work for a company called Chocolate Films, and at Chocolate Films, we make lots of documentaries and promotional videos, as well as running lots of workshops with young people and adults, teaching filmmaking skills, how to make their own short fiction films, or making documentaries or animation, a whole variety of things. So yeah, we do lots of that. So thank you for joining the session today. And for those who weren't part of the last session, I'll just give a quick recap. So the last session was all about how to get the best out of your phone and using it as a film camera, basically. And yeah, the best way to get shots from your camera phone, and as well as using your phone as a sound recorder. So all of those things which will make it capable to make a fantastic film. And so this session is going to all be about how to think about cinematography, which is just another kind of term or professional term for lighting, thinking about angles and thinking about lighting and how lighting is going to help tell your story and make it look professional too. As well as lighting's also going to talk about costumes and how to use costumes, but how to think about costumes in your film and how it's going to again tell your story, and also the same with props and set and location. And then the video is also going to talk about in-camera effects. So that's not necessarily about I guess computer effects or visual effects. It's more about how to create effects live on set, and using kind of tips and tricks to create really cool effects that will just lift the film and make it look a lot more professional. Yeah, so I'm gonna play the session now, and the tip was just to turn down your headphone volume to around medium. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the show. Screen share.
Hello. Hello, anybody out there? This isn't funny. Hello? Anybody out there? Hello, anybody out there? Hello? Where am I?
Hey everyone, welcome back. So we've talked about conceptualizing an idea for your short film, writing a script, creating a storyboard, and running the shoot. But before you shoot your film, there are a few more important things we want to discuss to ensure that your film looks as professional as possible. In today's lesson, we're going to focus mostly on lighting. Lighting is a huge part of filmmaking, and it can really be the difference between footage that looks amateur versus footage that looks really cinematic and professional. You might already be aware of this from some of your favorite YouTube channels. Have you ever been watching a YouTube video of a person speaking to camera and noticed that they just look amazing, whereas some other ones look a bit unprofessional? Well, I can guarantee you that it has nothing to do with the fancy camera that they were using. It all comes down to lighting. And every professional who works in front of or behind the camera knows that lighting is the key to making things look beautiful. Now, for filmmaking, we take lighting a step further than your average YouTuber. We don't just use lighting to make things look nice and beautiful. We really use light to convey meaning. The right lighting can be the difference between a scene that looks scary, ooh, or dramatic, or sci-fi. No. The best part is that you don't need fancy lighting equipment to make your film look good. You just need to understand how light works and how to use it. One good place to start is understanding that light can either be soft or hard. Soft light is diffused, which means that it's really well spread out. Like when it's an overcast day outside and no matter where you look, the light is similar. In general, soft lighting is always beautiful and it looks really lovely on people's faces. So if you're shooting a romantic scene and you want your actor or your actress to look especially nice, try shooting them next to a window when it's a really overcast day outside. This is a trick that a lot of our YouTuber friends tend to use. #NoFilter. Alternatively, hard light is direct light and it creates shadows. The harder the light, the darker the shadows. You can make a light harder or softer by bringing it closer or farther from the actor's face. You'll notice that we used only hard light in our film Unboxing. Hard light tends to create a lot of contrast, which is what adds drama to your image. It can be easy to overthink lighting when you're shooting your film, so I'll just give you a quick lesson on how to get started when you're lighting your actor. In general, when you light someone's face, you can work with light from the front, the side, or the back. If you light someone's face from the front, from the same angle that your camera is shooting on, there will be no shadows on their face. This type of light looks a bit flat and it's not very dramatic, but it can be really nice for making someone just look beautiful and get rid of any blemishes on their face. And it can also be nice for a lighthearted feel, like a comedy. Alternatively, when you light your actor from the side, you create some contrast and shadow on their face. Lighting from the side makes your image three-dimensional, which makes it look more cinematic. The more of an angle you set your light to the face, the deeper the contrast will be. In general, we often light actors' faces from a 45-degree angle. This is the most common lighting setup, and it tends to look really nice and cinematic. Notice the greater the angle, like 90 degrees, the more shadow you're creating on the face. The final direction your light could come from is directly behind your actor. This is called backlighting. I use backlighting a lot to help separate my actor from the space behind them. It's subtle, but it sometimes helps them stand out a little bit more. Sometimes you can even use only backlight. When you do this, you turn your actor into a silhouette or a shadow. And this means we can't really see the face at all, so it can be distracting if it's used incorrectly. But when you use it creatively, it can be really interesting. And there can definitely be a lot of great reasons to use this type of lighting in filmmaking. Perhaps when the axe murderer is just sneaking up on their sleeping victims. So now that you have a few lighting setups to play with, I'll give you a few other tips about lighting mistakes that you want to try to avoid. For instance, top lighting. When the light is coming from directly overhead, it can look really ugly on people's faces, so try to avoid that. The same can be said for light that comes from below. Again, unless you're using these things creatively. Also, keep an eye out for double shadows being created from too many lights coming from too many different directions. Another thing to avoid, unless you have a creative reason for it, is lens flares. And this is what happens when a light is pointing directly into the lens and it creates a flare. Overall, the main thing I want you to understand is that lighting is like painting or drawing. It's something you really need to spend time physically doing and practicing. And the more you do it, the more you'll learn. Try playing around with the light in your scene before you start shooting. Reposition your actors in the space or rearrange the lights in the room if you need to. Open or close a window, add a table lamp or even some fairy lights. Maybe create some shadows on the wall to add some interest. The shot in Unboxing, where we see the man's shadow on the wall against that creepy message, it wasn't something that we came up with in our imaginations. It's actually an idea that we discovered while we were playing with lights on set. And I think it's one of my favorite parts of the whole film. And we did it just by shining a table light on the actor while he was next to the box, and we were halfway across the room. We noticed that it created this big shadow on the wall, and I thought it looked really creepy, so we decided to keep it in the film. Another lighting setup that we did in our film Unboxing that I really loved, that was definitely planned, was our decision to use a small battery-operated LED light inside of the box so that when the actor opened the box up, the light poured onto his face. And I think it worked really well. And you can see it was a really simple idea that we had that was really effective on camera and didn't require any fancy equipment or special effects in post-production. So you see, you don't need fancy lighting equipment. You can use the light that is available to you. Daylight, the lights around your home, even the light on your phone. Play with all of it and see if you discover any lighting that would work well for your film and your story. Even something as simple as flickering the lights on and off to create a lightning effect can be really cool. In our film, we used some simple house lamps. We used one to light our actor, one to light the message on the wall behind him, and then another light on the box. We also used a small light outside of the door to make that creepy light pouring into the room. And as we moved through each of our shots, we adjusted the lights to make sure the scene looked as good as possible. This is a great tip as well. Don't just light your space once and forget about it. You should be looking at the light in every single shot and see if you can make it any better or more interesting. No one's going to notice if the light is slightly different between a wide shot and a close-up. And actually, close-ups in particular are a great time to pay attention to those lighting setups we talked about earlier: front lighting, side lighting, and backlighting.
Hi guys, I'm just going to give you a few top tips about lighting and ways that you can think about using the lights that you have available to you to make sure your film looks good and to use it creatively. I guess every household is going to have a table lamp or a lamp of some sort, and that's a great way to light your scene, a great way to light your characters. Our film, Unboxing, we used a table lamp throughout the whole thing, really. The great thing about a table lamp is that it's accessible, it's easy to use, and yeah, you can put it anywhere. And a great way to create soft lighting with something like a table lamp is to use like baking paper. And as you can see, it's quite cloudy. And if you were just to kind of take that over a table lamp, that straight away, that is going to turn a hard light into a soft light. So it's going to diffuse the lighting, make the shadows softer, and just generally look nicer on your character. Something else that you can use to light up a scene or a character is something as simple as the light on your mobile phone. So most phones have it now, and it's usually at the back of a phone. And yeah, it's just something simple, and especially if you're in a dark place, it just helps illuminate your scene. A great and creative way to use lighting in your film is to use some colored paper. So as you can see here, I've got a blue, pink, and green, and this one's more transparent. But yeah, colored paper that you can use over your lights. It can create some interesting lighting in your scene. It can create a type of mood depending on the type of genre that you're using. When using colored paper, just make sure that it fits your film. So for example, in Unboxing, which is a science fiction horror film, having colored lights really suits the mood and suits the genre. Yeah, these are kind of quite plasticky, so I wouldn't use these on like a table lamp, but something like an LED light, which is this here. And you can tell an LED light because usually it doesn't, it's not very hot. Whereas something like a lamp, it generates heat. Whereas an LED doesn't generate much heat, especially if you're using colored paper. Just make sure that it's not on a light, like a table lamp, that will generate some heat. And another great tip when you're thinking about lighting is not just what lights you have to light up a scene, but also the lights that you don't want. So you may be filming in a place that has windows, big or small, and you may not want the light from those windows. So you're gonna need to cover them up. And you can just use something as a black bin bag or some black paper. and you can just use that to cover up the windows or the place where the light is coming from that you don't want. We use that here when we were filming unboxing. We had a great big window in the room and lots of light was coming from it. So we just used a black cloth and we just taped out the whole of that window and the door so that none of the light that we didn't want could disturb the scene. Another great tip when it comes to lighting is to think about natural light. So that's the light that comes from the sun when you're filming outside. Of course, you can't control the sunlight, but you can use something called a reflector, which is this here. So if you were to use the sunlight as a backlight, then you can reflect the light from the sun onto the person's face, and it will be less harsh because it's reflecting off a surface and it's not coming directly from the sun. And you can also film on a cloudy day. That may not seem like the best day to film, but having a cloudy day works to your advantage. So a cloud is basically like baking paper. It will diffuse the light that comes from the sun so that you don't have as harsh light on the character's face or on a scene as a whole. So yeah, that's it. When you're filming outside, just try and use the sun to your advantage and don't knock off a cloudy day.
Lighting isn't the only thing that can help to make your film look more professional. You'll also want to consider sets, props, and costumes. These are considerations you'll want to think about before you start shooting. When it comes to sets, I'm not talking about building an entire stage inside of your home. That's way too much money and time. But what I do mean is that any location that you put in front of your camera is technically your film set, and so it's important to consider it carefully. When you make a film, you're creating an imaginary world, and everything in that world should serve the purpose of your story. So have a look at your location and see if there's anything that you want to change or add to it. Can you move some of the furniture around? Or can you reposition your actors for better lighting? Can you add some objects to the scene that make the frame look more well-balanced or to match the theme and tone of your film? For example, maybe you're shooting in your kitchen and you're making a fantasy film about a witch who's brewing a love potion. Have a look around your home and see if you have any magical looking objects that might help your kitchen look less like your own home and more like somewhere that a witch might live. In our film, we wanted the room to be completely empty and dark, so we cleared out all of our studio equipment and we used some black blankets to cover up the windows. We also used a black blanket to cover up some of the shelves that you could see through the door where the purple light was coming in. It was just a tiny detail, but we noticed it was kind of distracting and it gave away the idea that our character was in this strange, unknown place. So this simple effort went a long way into helping improve our scene, and it was an easy way to establish our set. Obviously, I need to add a disclaimer here. Make sure you check with your parents or whoever owns the location that you're filming in before you start moving things around or taking pictures off the wall or nailing holes in the wall. Making a film is fun, but it's important to be respectful and thoughtful of the process. Another really important consideration is costumes. If your film takes place in the future, try to think of something different or futuristic for your characters to wear. Perfect. If your film takes place in the past, maybe do a bit of research about what type of clothes the people would have been wearing around that time and see if you have anything in your home that maybe matches it. See, it doesn't have to be perfect. And obviously there's no need to go out and buy expensive costumes, but even just a little bit of effort can help your character to seem more realistic in the world that you created for them, and it'll make your film really stand out. Even if your character is someone who's living in the present day, whatever they're wearing in the film is a costume, so it's an important consideration. You can think about the colors that they're wearing, or try to pick a style for your character that really matches their personality. Just play around and have some fun. Your costumes don't have to be perfect or spot on, but anything that you can do to kind of enhance your character and the world you're creating is much better. Again, it's that whole idea of don't just pick up your phone and start shooting. Think about it. Think about everything you're putting in front of the camera. It's going to make a huge difference to the production value of your film.
Hello. Hi. How are you? It's fine. Where are you going? I'm going to Romania. Romania. Yeah. Just on you, yeah? Yeah, your ticket is fine. You can go. Have a good journey. Yes, please. Please, can you move your scarf and sunglasses? That's fine. 1 second, let me check your ticket.
Okay.
Are you rushing? Just on you, yeah? One person.
Yes, one. Hi.
Hi. How are you? Where are you going? Romania. Yeah, your ticket is fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, sir.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine.
Just only you, one person, yeah? That's fine. Thank you. Have a good journey. Bye.
You know what? I do know what it is. Yeah, no problem. Oh, National Arena.
This is amazing. Let's go in.
Sorry, no, too much security. Hello.
Guys, take it to your London, okay?
Yeah!
We want to stay in Romania.
Your mom and sister too much worry.
Okay, just give us an autograph, please.
Okay, but you first, I'm taking to your London, then I give it to your autograph.
Yes.
But by the way, what are you doing here?
We just misremember.
Be careful.
Yes, they're my brother. Cool. Whatever. Sorry about that. But I have a beer.
It's a long story, Lorena.
Where is this?
Hey, look, can't you stay with us?
Yes, of course. I want to introduce another friend. Oh, Ronaldo.
Man to the come of the game, man to the got that spin. Now I can't tell who's the favorite. Everyone came to the trailer. Everyone came to the trailer. Everyone came to the trailer. Man can't tell who's the favorite. Everyone came to the trailer.
Hey guys, so this is just a short section about things that we sometimes forget as filmmakers, but that are essential to help your filmmaking and to help you with making your film. So every filmmaker should try and have some tape of some sort. This is called Gaffer Tape, and this is just strong, very strong tape. It's very helpful when you're trying to maybe just tape down some cables or to help put things up, whether it's a black cloth or anything to cover the lighting or to hide something. It just comes in handy. Like, there's always a reason to have some tape around. Another thing to maybe think about, if you can, is a clapperboard. Who does not love a clapperboard? Oh, sounds so sweet. It just helps with numbering your shots and knowing exactly what shot is which when it comes from your storyboard. And it also helps if you're recording sound separately to sync the video and the audio together during the editing. Scissors always come in handy if you need to cut some paper or some cloth to the size that you need to. Some clips are also handy as well. Again, just to clip, whether it's some cloth or to clip anything together. These are crocodile clips, so these are very strong, but you can use any clips that you need. Pens. Everyone needs a pen. You're always going to need a pen. Trust me. I've been in many situations where you've got all your cameras ready and you've got all the equipment you need, and you're just looking for a pen and no one has a pen, and it just delays everything. So make sure you have a pen. A clipboard. So this is just handy to keep your paperwork all together. This clipboard has our storyboard on it, but you can have your script there, any piece of paper that you have it all in one spot. Comes in very handy too. And these interesting things are called zip ties. These just help keep things tidy, especially wires and cables. And the same with Velcro. If you don't have zip ties, you can use Velcro as well. Again, keeps everything nice and tidy. Another great item to have is an extension cable. I'm sure every household has one of these, but it just comes in handy, especially if you're using maybe table lamps or a lamp for lighting and the cable's really short. Yeah, these come in handy. We used extension cables when we were filming unboxing, so it'd be great to have these too. And lastly, just a simple black cloth. So it's great to cover windows if you want to block out lighting, and also to hide maybe objects or certain things that you don't want to be shown in your film. Yeah, it just comes in handy as well.
And now I'm going to hand you over to Ross. He's going to talk to you about creating some in-camera special effects.
You've now got all the information you need to make a really amazing film, but I'm going to take it one step further by showing you some really cool in-camera effects to help inspire you and help make your film really stand out. You might be more familiar with visual effects like CGI and green screen, which are added later on using computers. What I'm talking about is special effects. These are very different and much more fun and surprising, and all done during the actual filming process. This includes the clever use of props, scenery, scale models, animatronics, and atmospheric effects. This could be creating fake wind and rain or using special makeup or costumes. Special effects can also be achieved through creative camera use, and that's what we're going to look at now. One of my personal favourites is a classic Vanishing Trick. They used this back in very early cinema, and people are still using it today in things like TikTok. And the simple technique, you can make an object or a person suddenly appear or disappear. All you need to do is have the camera on a tripod or a steady surface and have the subject exit the shot while the camera continues to film. Because the camera stays completely still, all you need to do is chop out the leaving in the edit, and suddenly there's a seamless jump cut. So you can be super creative here. Someone can disappear and then return. Or you can get a cool hat from nowhere. or maybe even a cooler hat, or maybe even a whole fancy dress costume. Endless possibilities. Transition is a way of moving from one shot to the next, like this. Not very exciting, right? Lots of editing programs have built-in transitions, but they can look a bit cheesy. Let's see some examples. Star wipe, ripple effect, rotate, spin, puzzle, clock. I think it's actually much more fun to make these transitions yourself in camera, and it definitely adds more energy and creativity to your film. So let's look at 3 fun transitions. A whip pan is one of the most commonly used transitions and indicates a quick passage of time or a fast bit of action. It involves having some blurry motion at the end of the first shot and some blurry motion at the start of the second shot, and when you put them together in the edit, you have a really cool blur that covers the edit point. So for the first shot, you start by filming your character or action and then move away really quickly in one direction. This is the whip out. For the second shot, you need to start by whipping in and then filming your character or action. With any transition, it's always best to add a sound effect too, just to add a bit of drama. Now I'm going to do some whip pan transitions. This can be quite good if there's a sudden change in costume, maybe like a superhero. So you can do this side to side, or you could do it up and down. I'm going to try both, and then we can see how it looks. So this is the side whip. And this is the upward whip. Okay, now I'm going to change costume. Okay, so now we film the second part. So because the previous whip went up, this one has to start from the bottom and then come up. Similarly, for the one that went sideways, the previous shot went out, so this shot has to come in. Oh. And that should cut together quite nicely, hopefully. This one is a bit more abstract, but can be really effective in horror and sci-fi films. For the first shot, you need to move into an object or person with your camera, as close as you can go. For the second shot, you do the reverse action from a different object or person. Now I'm going to do the tracking in, tracking out transition. So I think this can work quite well if you actually move from a person to a person. So maybe even like an eye to an eye. So we've only got me. So what I'm going to do is draw an eye, first of all. Okay, very lifelike. And first of all, we're going to do the track in. So it's just like we talked about. So you have the camera and you move in almost as close as you can go. I'm just going to try that once more. It's always good to have 2 takes just in case. So I'm going to go quite wide and just move in quite fast for this one. And then for the second take, I'm going to track out from my own eye. So again, flipping it on to selfie mode. So holding it as close as possible, and the camera should adjust focus and exposure automatically. And just pull out from there. Let me try that once more. Tracking transition is really a great way to move from one location to somewhere completely different, but make it seem like they're right next to each other. So for this, you would track along in location 1 with your camera until you're completely behind a dark surface. Then in location 2, you start from behind the dark surface and track along in the same direction. So now I'm going to do a tracking shot. So getting in a wide shot of the room and tracking past into the door where it's a dark surface. I'm then going to move outside and do a shot from a dark surface out into exterior outdoors, and hopefully they should cut together quite well. So I'm going to do a nice wide shot and then just slowly track behind the door. Okay, so now I'm going to transition out to a street exterior. So I found this dark bin, not very glamorous, but it's going to do the job. So I'll track beyond the bin out onto the street in the same direction as the previous shot, and it should cut together quite well. When you put the two clips together in the edit, it creates a cool reveal between the locations. Forced perspective is a type of optical illusion. You can make objects appear further away, closer, larger, or smaller than they actually are. It's all about the careful positioning of your camera and the subject, and plays in the way we see the world with our eyes. It's been used in lots of big Hollywood movies like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. For example, certain scenes were shot in Harry Potter to make Hagrid look much bigger than the other characters, even though all the actors were roughly the same size in real life. This technique is quite commonly used in low-budget films too, especially monster movies. For example, a director can put a tiny model of a monster near the camera, and by putting a hero far in the background, the monster can suddenly look very big and terrifying. Now we're going to film some forced perspective. So I've got a little dinosaur friend for this, and I've managed to rope in the camera person to be attacked by the dinosaur. So all we need to do is get a range in. So we've got the dinosaur here, close to the camera. And by positioning the subject right at the back, they should hopefully look the same size. It's not going to look perfect, but that's half the fun. So we'll get our subject in place now, and then I'm going to hit record and wind up the dinosaur. Filmmakers today use lots of different lenses and techniques to achieve certain results, but sometimes the simple solution is the best one. A common approach is to film through prisms, which can be any household object like glasses or an empty bottle. This can add glares, lights, and reflections to the footage in camera. If you're making a drama, then it can add a dreamlike quality, or if you're making a horror, it can make the viewer feel scared or disorientated. The fun thing about this is that you can just experiment, and there isn't really a wrong way of doing it. If you think it looks cool, then it's cool. Now we're going to look at filming using prisms. This basically means filming through any surface at all. So you can just have fun with it and see what looks cool. So I'm going to find a yellow glass and a tumbler with some ripples on it. So we can basically just put it in front of the camera and see how it turns out. Have you ever seen a movie where it looks like something has actually spilled onto the camera lens? It's most often done with fake blood and can be pretty gruesome, but really effective. It can make the viewer feel as if they're really close to the action. So how do they do it? First of all, you need a plastic screen from a picture frame. Put this in front of the camera and simply film your action through this screen and splatter on the blood when it's needed. Now we're going to do some blood splatter. So, as I said earlier, what you're going to need is the plastic frame from a picture frame and your camera and maybe some red material or fake blood. So you need something to hold it. I've got quite lucky that there's a little gap in the wood here, so it's keeping it in place. But if you've got an extra person on set, they can just hold it in place. And all you have to do is line your camera up behind it And you'll be able to see that it just looks the same as normal because it's looking straight through the glass. So all we're going to do is basically throw some blood on the glass, and it's going to look like it's landed on the camera lens. So this is really good for quite gruesome action scenes. So let's imagine someone's just fell over and died in front of the camera and some blood spurted out and all over the lens. Obviously, we don't have an actor in place, but we'll do the blood part. So I'm going to just put some fake blood here. I'm going to start recording on here. That's it, you've made it. We've taught you everything we know, and you now have all of the knowledge you need to make your very own super professional, super sleek, super cool short film. You should be really proud of coming this far. This is a lot of information to take on board, but I guarantee if you follow our lessons, you'll be able to make an amazing short film and be well on your way to winning that Oscar statue for your mantle.
Okay, so that was the end of the recording.